Hi everyone, Luke Hector here. We're recording podcast 128. It's a little dark in here, but I don't think that'll be too bad. It should be all right. I got some window light there, and if necessary, I'll go turn the light on. But yeah, this is 128, February the 8th, and this is a big penultimate day for me because I pretty much have had the easiest couple of months of my life in terms of work stress. Sort of. I mean, I basically wound down my notice period for my last job, and that ended on the end of January. And whenever you're in the notice period for work, it's typically an easier ride, shall we say, compared to, full on work. And then, especially during January, when there's not a lot of work for corporate tax accountants anyway. But then I also took a week off break between leaving on the 30th of Jan and starting my new job tomorrow. Yes, I start tomorrow. They originally sort of wanted like second, but no, I need a week break. I've been up north to visit my brother, hence there's not been that much video content lately. And yeah, that was a good visit. It was nice to go visit him and my sister-in-law, but I needed the break between jobs, and I start tomorrow. New job, similar role, few tweaks, but yeah, new place, new culture, new people. It's it's scary. It always is scary to start a new job because you never know if it's like jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, in terms of why you're moving jobs. And, I've no reason to believe that right now. They've been very nice people, and I'm looking forward to it, in terms of like this could be a really good, fun place to work. But a job's a job. Work is work. You don't wake up in the morning going, I get to go to work today. It's like, no, it doesn't. You do it to pay your bills. And I'm just hoping that this will be a decent job that's challenging enough, but not too stressful, not boring, and not gonna, basically not gonna stress me out like crazy, like, sometimes in the previous one did. So, yeah, it's a scary prospect, but people have been very supportive. They're wishing me luck in that. So by all means, thanks for that. You don't have to get it in the comments down below if you don't want to. So it's I'm not asking for supportive comments on that front, but it's just I've enjoyed a bit of a break, but now it's hard focus mode in the office a lot. The long commute to Southampton, the horrible M27 roadworks, early morning get-ups. It's beginning again. Yeah, we're back. Playtime's over. It's time to be serious. But that also goes for the channel because obviously I took a bit of a break from video content while visiting my family. So there hasn't been a huge amount of video stuff at the moment, but certainly we've now finally started getting the top 50 of all time done. I released the 50 to 41 yesterday. Not as many views as I would have liked for its first inclination, only 2,000, but you know what, hopefully that'll build up over time. And to be fair, the top 50 generally ends up being very much a curve. So it starts off fairly low and mediocre in terms of engagement, and then once you get to the top 25, it really does heat up then. So I'm expecting the 20 to 11 and the 10 to 1 to be a lot more lucrative or something, whereas the other three I suspect will get views, just not anywhere near as many. But by all means, if you are just unaware that it's come out, then by all means, get on it. Get on it and please watch it. There's some cool games in there. 27,187 subs, plus 130 in the last 28 days. That's not a bad shout, honestly. If I could maintain that for life, I'd be pretty happy with that ratio, because it just means getting on, but obviously it'd be nice to see more. Your channel is 12 years old. Oh man, do I feel old. I feel so old at 41 to be told that my channel is 12 years old. So that means this was when I started YouTube. I did Blogspot before then. So in terms of reviewing content, I'm probably something like 15 years old in that regard. But 12 years old since I started doing a YouTube channel. Oh my God, that is so old. I feel so old. I'm like, he chose poorly. As I really do feel like that. As much as I've tried intermittent fasting in the last month and going to the gym a lot, it's made a bit of a difference. I've certainly burned off all the excess Christmas weight, but still a bit to go, still pudgy face, still a bit of a dad bod stomach, even though I'm not a dad. So there's still plenty of work to do throughout the next month or two, I reckon. I'll keep this up for February, see how I get on by the end of February, and then maybe throughout some of March, mitigating it a little bit. I won't be quite as hardcore maybe this month and next month as I was in January, but yeah. as much as I can to try and thin the body out, shall we say. But yeah, so, as I said, not a lot of content. I've done the 50 to 41, and I released a review for Valheim. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, I released Valheim shortly after the last podcast. 2,000 views. Was hoping for a bit more, but then Valheim's not going to be a widely known distributed game yet, so that's probably early days. Good to see some good, some half decent views for others. Although again, they've sort of capped. I mean, White Castle Duel only 1,500, Epona only 1,300. Citrus 1,000, but that's a fairly unheard of game. Blooming Cells expansion for Windmill Valley, so 1,400 there. So I mean, yeah, views for the top 10 of 25, great, and then a lot of stuff like beforehand, really great. But I guess maybe we're just in a lull period for people watching YouTube at the moment, or maybe that these games aren't just that well heard of. I mean, that's why you don't see a lot of reviewers doing these. I mean, how many reviewers have done the Blooming Cells expansion, Citrus, and Epona? Not that many, and they know it won't get that many views, and so they haven't bothered doing any content for it. But yeah, like I say, we'll build up. Obviously, it was a slow week because I've been away visiting family. Time to get back to work. So 50 to 41 is out. 40 to 31 is in the editing room. In fact, it's about 3/4 of the way finished, so that shouldn't take too long before that comes out. 30 to 21 is recorded. It just hasn't started on the editing process, and I haven't even recorded the other two yet. So, I mean, this is basically going to be something that takes place over the next month, I would say. Yeah, give me a month to release all 5 of them. I think it'll be fine. In terms of talking about games that fell off the list, I'll bolt that on to the 10 to 1. Maybe I'll do a sick video, or maybe I'll make that a podcast episode, because I do need more topics. So, yeah, that's something to look forward in the future. But yeah, otherwise, yep, scary prospects of starting a new job and getting back into the channel. But other than that, some repetitive strain injury on my right thumb. That's what comes from doing a lot of keyboard work and browsing on your phone and stuff, so I've got to watch that from a physio's perspective. But yeah, generally, that's life at the moment, so nothing else. Still living the bachelor life as always. Okay, right, so we're going to talk quickly about a couple of small games that I've recently played and got into the collection just before I get on the main topic. So first off, we're going to talk about a game called Fishing, or Fission, or whatever it is. Basically, these are a couple of trick-taking games that I've recently acquired because if you know me and my channel, I like trick-taking games. So I've definitely been getting into a few of these. In fact, I think I've played a bunch of them, but I haven't necessarily done a lot in recent months apart from, January and December. So I'm actually now getting to the point where I feel like I can do a top 10 trick-taking games list and actually talk about 10 that I absolutely adore, as opposed to just, here's a few that I love and here's a few that are meh. Now, I reckon I can talk about 10 bloody good ones. So hopefully I'll maybe do that top 10 list, maybe during or after the top 50 is done. Maybe I'll make that the first top 10 list. Okay, so Fishing from Freedom and Freeze, so Rio Grande Games, Freedom and Freeze. This is definitely, if you know his games, they do have a very unique style. He's one of the more unique game designers, I think, out there. Whether he does a Euro or a small little card game, it's always going to be very different. He likes to push the envelope a little bit as to what we expect from a Euro game, and fair credit, because I think we need more of those in the industry. So even though I don't tend to go mad for Freedom Freeze games, because I mean, if we look at his stuff, yep, God bless the Germans for giving us some cool stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's very hit and miss with me. So notable games: Fearsome Floors, fine. Power Grid, hate its guts. Famiglia, it's alright. 504, crashed and burned, but fair play, you tried something very different. I applaud you for your innovation. Fabled Fruit, it's a little overrated. Fast Sloths, that was an interesting little game. Same with Fayum. What was that, a card? No, so not card game, but yeah, Fayum I thought was alright. Fancy Feathers, not bad. I mean, let's say that they're sort of like fine, not bad, but nothing's really sort of like stood out like crazy. And this is a notable game. So there's a few there not mentioned. Yeah, Friday's fantastic. Yeah, that's a really good solo game. Any others just from the first sort of page? Because I'm not going to go through all of these, but yeah. Let's try one more page, and then I promise I'll stop. Power Grid, hate. Terror, nah. So, I mean, as I say, it's hit and miss, but I like that he tries something a little bit different. And, you know, even if you don't necessarily always succeed in winning me over with a game, I like the fact you try something new, and I applaud you for that. Fishing is definitely trying something new, though, with a trick-taking thing, because it's essentially trick-taking mixed with pseudo-deck building, I think you could say. The idea with this is that you play several rounds of tricks in the normal fashion. Play a card, follow suit. I mean, I'm not going to explain how trick-taking works. If you don't know how trick-taking works, then look it up, but I think most gamers listening to this channel know how a trick-taking game works, hopefully. But the idea is that it's the standard rules. Play a card, follow suit, highest card wins the trick, right? You start off with a bunch of basic cards in certain suits, and they go up to, like, I think, value 10 or something, you know, like not particularly high. And the idea is that they don't have any special abilities in their basic cards. So you play through a round, and you take note of all the tricks you've won, and you get a point for every trick you win. But then what happens is there's a deck of cards in the middle of the table that have all these different funky cards. So there are either cards that are ranked above 10, a trump suit of fish, which trump everything else, special cards like these buoy markers here, or the 0 cards, which have like extra effects like nicking cards from the trick and stuff like that. You know, so these are in the mix. But the idea is that, like, you know, even just the basic 11 and 13 in this picture here, they come from the special deck. But what happens is each round there's a hand size, and you take all your tricks and you win them and you put them on your net card here, right? Then you shuffle them all together and put them on your boat card, which is effectively your deck. If you have less than the hand size for the round, your remaining cards that make up your effective hand for the next round is made up of cards from the special deck. So the worse you do in a round, the more special cards you get for the next one. And obviously, if you win a bucket load of tricks, you might find that you won't get any special cards because your deck hand size is so many tricks. But people are winning tricks. So the cards that you've got, including some of the specials, could be going to other players. And some of the specials will nick cards out of a trick. Like, you could play a really good 14 card that wins the trick, but somebody plays the 0 that nicks a card from the trick before you win it. And it's like, ah, damn, there goes my 14. It's, you know, the cards go back and forth. And it's such a clever idea. I mean, do I love it? No. I mean, I like it a lot. I think this is one that's going to have to grow on me a little bit. My problem is that it's a bit long. I think you play about 8 rounds in this game or something, and I think the rounds can take a little bit of time, and 8 rounds is maybe just a couple of rounds too many. Like, maybe it should have capped at 6 rounds. What's it got down here? So here's the components. You know, the cards are pretty basic looking. Oh, stupid, your privacy nonsense, get off the screen. Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so 8 rounds. I just think 8 rounds is maybe a little bit too long. That's my gripe with the game. That it's a bit long, but it's a very clever little trick taker because you've got the familiar rules in there. The special effects on these cards are not complicated. They're pretty easy to deal with, but you got to be prepared that they're there. And because you've seen the cards appear and you've seen where they go to, you can remember, if you've got a good memory, like which players have got those cards. Did they draw their entire deck for the next round? Maybe there's a chance they didn't get those cards. But then it's you know, and you might think, well, do I want to win a bunch of tricks this round, or do I, you know, I could win this trick, but if I win the trick, I'm just winning a point and some basic cards. I feel like maybe I want to lose this trick so that I have better cards for the next round. There's a lot of interesting little tweaks that you can do with the your thinking process here, and it just made for. I think I played it once at HandyCon. Someone showed it to me there, and you know. And I played it and I thought, oh yeah, I want to try this game more. And it was I think it was like hard to find. I think you could only get it. I don't know if it was at Essen or like overseas, but at the time you couldn't get it. Now you can. So I bought it from you know, the Firestorm Games. Was it Firestorm Games? I think it was. Yeah, that come to HandyCon, and you know, bought it from them. You know, for fairly cheap. I mean, what was it, about like 10 quid tops? I mean, you know, 9-10 quid. I mean, it wasn't expensive. And yeah, I played it a couple of times while I was there, and it's like, yeah, you know, this one will grow on me. You know, I do think it's a bit long, especially when you get a lot of players in, but you kind of want a fair amount of players in because you want a bit of nut jobs with the cards. You know, it works fine at 3, it works decent at 5, it's just a bit more chaotic. I think maybe 4 is a sweet spot, you know, you get the best of both worlds. But yeah, it's just simple rules, but a cool concept. You know, it's another one of these trick takers or another one of these games that tries to do something different with a genre that's already got a lot of examples in it. And when you do that and you hit, then it works even better with me. I mentioned looking at Freedom and Freeze's other games that some of those ones push the envelope and didn't work. Well, this one pushes the envelope and does work. So if you get a chance to try this and you're a trick-taking fan, by all means do. It's a interesting little game. All right, and then moving on to another trick-taker that I've recently acquired. I think I also got it at HandyCon. Actually, I think I just bought a couple of small games off them because I wanted to buy something. I just wanted to buy some games. This is Luz, L-U-Z. I don't know what the hell the Luz is meant to represent. And she went to the cathedral, blah, 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 nice coloured windows, whatever. I mean, the theme in both of these games is non-existent. And you can argue the fishing one's got a little bit of theme with some of the special cards, but that's about it. This ain't got theme, it's just an excuse for pretty pictures. But this is from Yellow Games. I think it came out last year. I remember this one getting a lot of buzz at the UK Games Expo. Like, people have sort of gone, oh yeah, this is a really great game, you got to try it. And then by the time I was done with the Expo and Dranda Games and that, and I decided to go have a look, I couldn't find any copies to buy, and I couldn't really get into a game to play it, so I just left it be and didn't really care. So at HandyCon, I saw this again. I thought, oh yeah, this is one I heard about. So I bought it and just decided, you know what, let's try it at HandyCon. And this is a trick taker that is kind of borrowing a little bit of notes from Hanabi and Tribes of the Wind and stuff like that. So you've got these beautiful looking cards, and they are really nice. Nice colourful cards. I've seen better, but they're still pretty nice. And I've definitely sleeved these. And as a little note on the sleeving front, I think this is French tarot size. So you're going to need specific sleeves to fit them ideally. Because it is Yellow Games, French, therefore French tarot. Yeah, it's going to be that kind of size. But this is a little game, interesting little game, where basically, if I show this, now you don't get stands in here. Someone else has done this. But what you do is you draw your hand of cards for the round. And you then bid, like in turn order, using these beads, how many tricks you think you're going to win. Okay, how many tricks you think you're going to win. The blue is like a safety bead. You won't get as many points if you succeed, but it kind of gives you a +1, I'm not sure if it's a -1 as well, but like a +1 safety buffer. You won't get as many points, and the points go up each round, so that is one slight flaw of the game. I think they should be equal numbers. I find that giving loads of points to the fourth round kind of undermines the point of the first couple of rounds. I'd be interested to know your thoughts on that. But the idea is, as you can see, you're holding the cards the wrong way. You look at the cards from the back. So when you get your initial hand of cards, you look at all the values and you see what they are. And then you put this placer card to show whether you've organized it in ascending or descending order, and then pass the hand to the player on your left. They then don't look at the numbers. They put the cards, as you can see here, with their backs facing away, grouped up into the suits. And the way this works is that you can see everybody else's cards, but not your own. And some are not even in the round, so you don't even have perfect information. So you're bidding on how many tricks you think you can win, based on your new hand and what you see out there. So yeah, I think I got the order slightly messed up. You don't bid on the number of tricks you win when you get your initial hand. You do it after you've got your hand from your player to your right. So, before you start the round. So that's an interesting little quirk in itself, but it means that you're sort of thinking, right, I can see that from everything that's up to 8 in value, I can see there's a bunch of 7 and 8s out there for these colors, which means the ones I've got are going to be low value. I don't think I'm going to win many tricks this round. But then you might not see the 8, and you're like, well, they've got some high values there, but I do have a couple of blues. Is that one of these blues an 8? I don't know. I'm a little bit worried. And during the round, you'll get a chance to think, well, they've played their 6 and 7. Is this an 8? I could win the trick, but I don't know if I want to. And it's like, there's, based on how many tricks you think you're going to win. And it's, there's a little bit of guessing in it, but you can make some, logical decisions, particularly when you get to the end of the round and you realize, yeah, this definitely must be lower than this and stuff like that. Those cards went up to 12. It depends how many players you've got, but it's a nice looking game. The cards are very nice. They're very pretty to look at. It's very easy to tell the suits apart because the iconography is very clear as to what the suit differentiation is. So even if you're colorblind, it won't matter. You can see the back of the cards have got the suit differentiation very clear. So it's very easy to see which cards people have got. But yeah, I'm finding this one quite interesting as well. I mean, do I like it as much as fishing? I think fishing is a bit more clever and a little bit more entertaining, but this one is shorter. You only play 3 rounds, I think, in this one, 4 tops. And I think that makes the game a little bit quicker and a bit more of a sort of filler. Whereas fishing isn't really a filler. You're playing fishing as a short game of the night, but in no way is it a filler. You won't get 8 rounds done in 30 minutes. It just ain't going to happen. But you could get Luz done in less than 30 minutes pretty easily. You should be able to anyway. So, yeah, I've enjoyed this one as well. It's you got to get used to holding the cards, though. That's the thing, because you have got this placeholder card that you shove on either side, and you've got to be comfortable with fanning your cards. If you're not good at fanning your cards in your hand, like in one hand, it could be a little bit fiddly for you to sort of micromanage the cards, because obviously everybody needs to see what cards you've got. You can't make it like hidden or anything. So, be comfortable with that. Be good at, what the hell? Slag in Lude. What language is this? Slag in Lude, 999 games. Somebody tell me what language this is. Does it say? I need to know what language this is. Brilliant name. Oh, seriously, is this German? Is this German or Dutch or what? I need to know what Slag in Lude is. Somebody in the comments tell me what language that is. Because I don't think it's going to translate either way. But I need to know. That's a weird name for a game. I mean, I would have picked this up ages ago as a trick taker game if it was called Slag in Lude when I saw it in a shop as opposed to Luz. But yeah, that's just weird. I just find it quite funny. But yeah, pretty looking game, small box, filler, nice little clever thing. Again, a nice solid trick taker. Both of these are going to have to get more plays before I can say whether they're going to stay in the collection or, get ranked highly or lowly or something. I'm not doing full videos for these, obviously, but yeah, that's why I'm talking about them on the podcast. And that's kind of what the podcast is good for, actually. Talking about the little games that I can't really spend the time and effort to do a full video for. But yeah, these are pretty neat little trick takers so far. So by all means, suggest any others that you think I'd like. Bear in mind, you have seen reviews of ones that I already have done, so by all means, if I've done a video, don't suggest it. Nikosu Dice would be a good example of that. But yeah, there's a bunch on my shelf. I've got things like Niet and Tricky Badger and Diamonds and any others, and obviously the Crew. So yeah, there's a bunch of trick takers that I've got that I like. But let's say if you know any good little ones that have got these little clever mechanics and aren't just basic trick takers, then yeah, by all means suggest them because they're cheap, cheerful. Oh yeah, 4 Northwood. I've got that as well, so don't need to suggest that one. But yeah, so yeah, well, 2 pretty good little trick takers that I found for a total of less than £20. Gotta just say, I mean, when you're spending €70, 70 quid on a big euro and you play it a few times and you realize, nope, this euro is not for me, or it's just the same old, or it's just too long, too punishing, whatever. And then you can pay $20 and get yourself a couple of little card games that barely take up any space and give you more fun. It just goes to show that, the price point of a game shouldn't dictate how good it is. All right. Okay, let's get on with the meat of this episode, though. So, I did a podcast recently. Go figure. What do you think I do? It was called, Can I Forgive These Games? And it got some interesting feedback. I'm going to take some coffee while I'm at it, so hang on. Oh, that is still hot. These Contigo mugs that I use these every time I go to Cafe Nero and other coffee shops and that, and I bring them to conventions. For a tenner, these are damn good mugs. I mean, they are big, they hold a lot of liquid, you can drink from them easily, they stay sealed, and they really do keep the heat in. I mean, wow, this is still piping hot, and I poured this probably a good 30-40 minutes ago or something, which, granted, it's a Thermos East type flask, it's meant to last hours, but I have managed to occasionally leave this in my car, not realizing I still had half a mug left, come back after several hours and it's still hot or still warm to drink, and it's like, wow, I do love these. Side plug there. But yeah, so I did this podcast and shall we say it got mixed reception. For the most part, people liked it and enjoyed it and got the deal. I mean, it wasn't me trying to be super serious. It was me just having an excuse to sort of let some venting out and talk about a bunch of games that, truthfully, I do hate. But I was willing to forgive and forget a bunch of them and sort of go, you know what? Maybe I was a bit harsh. These are better. They've been improved. And there were some that actually did meet that mark. These were ones that I've rated like a 1 or a 2. Like, they've just made me angry to play them. And it's like, maybe I was being a bit too harsh. People enjoyed it. Some people didn't. Some people didn't quite get the idea of the episode, or thought I was just being harsh for harsh sake. It's like, no, and obviously there were going to be people that love those games to death that would have hated my guts as well. I mean, the amount of people that were sort of coming back saying, how do you not like Barrage? I love Barrage. Look, if you love Barrage, go right ahead. But that game seriously just has no redeeming features for me. I don't get why. Actually, no, that's harsh. I do get why people like it. Yeah, I'm not blind to that fact. But it does everything that is just there to make me mad. It's like anything from its look, its component quality, its length, its punishing gameplay, its mediocre mechanics. It just, everything about it is just designed to annoy me. So it's not a game I'm going to be forgiving that one anytime soon. But fair enough. I was like, oh, okay, fine. Not a, most people liked it, but there were a few that were like, okay. Well, I gotta give props to a viewer who's very vocal on my channel in terms of, good praise and giving ideas and feedback. If I can find him. So here we go. Comment here. So thank you for the comment, Rindell. I know you in real life, but that is your YouTube name. I do hate the fact that YouTube messes around with the usernames on these. Right, so excellent stuff as always. When you are talking about a board game, Luke, remember not to hold back and say what you really think. Yep, that's always the case. But you could maybe do the opposite in the next podcast and discuss if your 9s and 10s are still worthy. Maybe. Not a bad idea, is what I said to that. And, yeah, that's not a bad idea at all, actually. This is me playing devil's advocate, because I've basically done a podcast where I've taken a bunch of games I hate and gone, can I forgive these games? And obviously it, involves me hating on a lot of games. But doing it in reverse, taking a bunch of games I rated a 10, and then deciding if I was too generous, if I was, too much of a, well, shall we say, IGN about it. Yeah, fight me. IGN is one of the worst things to be put on media in terms of reviewing anything. They are just a bunch of lying, misleading little... whatever. I gotta keep this family friendly. But yeah, if you like IGN, what's wrong with you? But, I just thought, yeah, maybe there was a few reviews I rated a 10 that I was a little bit too generous on. That does happen. So I figured, you know what, let's do the devil's advocate approach. If you're going to be harsh on a bunch of games, then now's the time to, give some criticisms to, some of the ones that you rated really highly. Now, granted, most of these I think are going to be justified in my mind, because the disparity between a game I don't like at all and meh, mediocre, boring or whatever, but it's fine, is a lot smaller a gap than the gap between mediocre and I love it to bits. Like, you don't have to put in the too much effort to get between a ranking of a 1 and a ranking of a 5 in my mind, because they're not exactly good ratings anyway, although 5 I will still play an average game. I just don't particularly seek it out. When you get down to 4, 3, 2s, that's when I actively don't want to play the games. But yeah, there's only so much disparity. When you're going from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, though, it's harder, it's a bigger curve. It's a much harder slope to climb. So, the difference between a game that I would rate a 10 and a game that I would rate a 6 even is insanely high. These are games that I actively want to own, spend money on, pimp up, get to the table as often as possible, so there's a big difference. So a lot of these games I don't think are going to be ones where I'm going to say, yeah, you know what, I was a bit too generous on these. But I had a look. You won't be able to see it on my screen, but I have got screenshots of all the games that I have rated a 10, and there aren't that many. Trust me, 10s I do not give out willy-nilly. But I've had a look at some of them, and it's like, most of these I would still keep as a 10. There are a few, though, which I think maybe I was a bit too lovey on, and they could even include recent stuff. So, by all means, let's see if we can balance the books a bit, play devil's advocate, and say, you know what, if you're going to do it one way, gotta do it the other. So, okay, let's crack on and get some games on here. So obviously you can't see the screenshots I've got, but I'm not going to go through every single one I've rated a 10, because even though there aren't that many, it would still take me forever to do them. But let's go through a few that could be in contention. So hang on, let me get to right. So I don't want YouTube comments. I want Board Game Geek. Here we go. So we're going to go through a few. So first one I can think of is Seven Wonders. In fact, Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duel are games that I have rated a 10. Now, I'm still, I think, gonna stick with a 10 for Seven Wonders Duel, definitely. Seven Wonders Duel is a fantastic two-player game. I only really want to play it with Pantheon. I don't think the second expansion was any good, but honestly, I will still play Duel with the base set. You know, I just think it's improved with Pantheon. But this is such a good game. Like, this one really, I think, is something that I think justifies a 10 for me or something. It's not that hard to learn, particularly if you have played Seven Wonders before. It's a really good tense back and forth. It can really lead to some good tactical play, and it's a very clever system. So I definitely like playing this on Board Game Arena, and I like playing it in person. So, you know, this is definitely one I would go for a 10. Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders is where things get a little interesting. And when I say, I mean, one thing I will caveat is that I'm not necessarily saying when I reviewed it, I was too generous to give it a 10. Although there may be a few on this list that I might give that reasoning to. But it's also, did it stand the test of time? Like, does it still warrant a 10 now? You know, as you know, just like the other week when I was doing, do these games still warrant a 1? Well, Seven Wonders, I still think is a really, really solid game. I mean, the only gripes I have with it, like, I would much prefer to play it with expansions, but that's just because I've played it a bunch of times. You know, it's certainly got my money's worth out of it. The base set is still really, really good fun. You can argue that the science is a little bit overpowered in the game, and certainly if you let one person get it all, then you're kind of asking for it. But, you know, if you're aware of that small fact, I don't think that's enough to drop it from a 10 to a 9. I still think that this one is a game that is deserving of its evergreen status. It's a great drafting game. Other games have tried to mimic it and never come anywhere close to, like, meeting its simplicity and caliber, even though I don't call this a gateway game by any means, because it's definitely not a gateway game with the amount of iconography you've got to teach people. But there's a problem when you get... Can I just say, people, when you're putting photos up on Board Game Geek, I'm interested in looking at the game, not random bloke who's playing the game, okay? It's like, that is why I don't take pictures of people when I'm playing games at conventions. I take pictures of the game. Like, I can't see the game here. I can't see anything on the table. All I can see is 5 people I've never met in my life. It's like, I'm not interested in that. Show me the game. But I digress. Ran over. This is meant to be a positive list. So, yeah, I still think it's a great drafting game, really good fun. I'm sticking with the 10 on this one. You know, even to this day, I think it's still worthy of a 10. I mean, even at most worst, it would be a high 9. But it's still, for me, I think, still up there. All right, let's have another look. Okay, let's have a look at... let's have a look at Architects of the West Kingdom. So this is... In fact, I'm going to look at 2 of these, actually. I'm going to look at Architects of the West Kingdom, and I'm also going to look at Viscounts of the West Kingdom, because both of these I gave a 10. I didn't particularly like Paladins, so I only gave that one like a 6. Actually, well, or did I... is that one of the ones that I gave like an 8 when I first played it and then realized, that was a mistake and gave it like a 5 or a 6 afterwards. So yeah, that was probably one of those. But Architects and Viscounts, I gave a 10. Was I a little bit generous with those? I mean, I do enjoy both of them a lot, but both of them have not been played in a while. I think these are starting to sway a little bit in the test of time. The problem is that expansion bloat didn't help. The first expansion for Architects is great. I definitely recommend it. But the second one is a bit too much bloat on top. Like, it doesn't really add enough that's great to justify the extra teaching load and everything, which is annoying because I've got the playmat which has the extra bits on top. So I basically have to sort of use it as dead space on the board. But it's a solid game nonetheless. You know, the idea that this is a typical worker placement of get resources and build buildings. You know, that stuff is simple, but you got a lot of different buildings with a lot of different effects, as you can see here. The artwork is really good. You know, I like Miko's artwork. It's a unique style, but it's a style that I get into. The slight problem with it is that, you know, some of the gameplay is dictated by the townhouse as to whether... or whatever it is, the town center, where people can arrest each other. Now, I like that mechanic, and it's one of my favorite aspects, but new players to the game might not know how to work it correctly. And so they either just keep arresting for the sake of it, or they don't do it enough. They don't keep people in check. But, again, that's a relatively small gripe. But is it still worthy of a 10? I mean, is it really that much of a benchmark game? I think I'm still willing to justify it on this one. Maybe at best it could be a 9. At worst, sorry, it could be a 9. I certainly don't think it's worthy of falling from a distinction level rating. But, that is one potential issue. I don't like the second expansion that much. I do think that hurts it a bit. I mean, the second expansion is great if you're a solo player, because the solo mode they put into the second expansion was pretty solid. But the new mechanics, not so much. But the game is still good fun. It takes not a long time to play. I mean, I've played a 6-player game of this in 90 minutes once. I mean, that's bloody good going for a 6-player Euro worker placement game. So it's definitely got a lot of good stuff going for it. People can argue that manipulating the sort of low virtue and black market is a bit too powerful. Well, I mean, you still have to get your virtue up later, so there's still an element of that. But yeah, this is one of those games where if you stay in highest virtue all the time, it may hurt you slightly. Whereas if you're willing to bend the books a little bit during the game, and then rise yourself up a bit higher, then that can pay dividends. But I think it's definitely gone down for me over time. I think this is definitely no longer quite a 10 in my books. I think this has dropped to a 9. It was in danger of dropping to an 8 at one point, but I think it's now settling on a 9, and definitely I want to play it with the first expansion pretty much all the time, really, but I rarely want to play with the second one. It's still a solid worker placement game, and, 10 is meant to be one thing to stress is 10 is not a perfect game, okay? It never is. Even my favorite game ever is not a perfect game. Every game has flaws, and if you don't believe that your game has flaws, then you're in a dream world here. So, but the 10 is meant to be a benchmark rating. So when I consider the genre, the genre, publisher, designer, mechanic, theme, this is the type of game that I would say, right, I'm going to be comparing other games to. Can you do it as well? And I think Architects still meets that benchmark target, because there is some cool, unique twist to this one to make it what is effectively a simple get resources and build buildings type worker placement game, much like what something like Stone Age and that was, and making it that much more interesting. So I think this one still justifies the 10. I'm not so sure, though, that Viscounts did. I think this could be the one where I was like, maybe a 10 was a bit generous. Because I do really enjoy Viscounts. It is a really solid game. Because I love the sort of conveyor belt thing with the workers, with the apprentices or whatever they're called in this one, the villagers, and I like the sort of rondel mechanic with moving your knight around and doing all the different actions. It is a solid game, but expansion bloat really did hurt this, and this is definitely one of the mistakes I think I made when I reviewed the expansions. I gave them quite a high rating, because I thought, oh yeah, these are good fun, they're adding, cool new things to the game. But over time, I've actually got to the point now where I don't want to use the expansions, because the expansions do add a lot of bloat to a game that's not exactly, bare bones as it is, and they get fiddly at times with some of the stuff in it, like the purple villagers, the ones that have like endgame scoring and that, just don't seem that interesting. The King's Favor stuff, again, not that great. Mainly the expansions help to balance a little bit, with the manuscripts and the castle, which was, you can argue the castle was a little bit overpowered and the manuscripts weren't as powerful before. Buildings have been balanced a little bit as well. So there are things from the expansions that I will use in the game, because they are small modules that you can throw in, but like the treasure chests and stuff like that. There were just a few little additional modules that, I don't know, were just a bit too fiddly for their own good. Now, saying that, the, the asymmetric cards that you can put in your original deck, like those hero cards, they're really good. I like those, so I like to use them a lot. You can hear a dog barking, sorry about that. But yeah, I think there's elements from the expansions that are good, but yeah, they did add a lot of bloat, and I think I was too generous with those. With this game, I also do think I was maybe a bit too generous at a 10. I mean, it's certainly potentially a 9. Maybe it could be an 8. I mean, it's not been played in a while. I enjoy it when it gets played, but The expansions have hurt it, and it hasn't hit the table as much as other, the Tigris games are hitting the table more than the West Kingdom stuff now, and this is one of the ones that have suffered more. It is still a solid game, but especially in its like base game only form, you have got to admit that the four different sort of paths to victory are not entirely balanced. I mean, you don't really use the trade one, the money bag symbol, as a path to victory. It's more of a means to an end. With the expansions, you can kind of focus a lot more on it, but not so much in the base game. Buildings are good, but not easy to do, and the expansion did balance them a little bit more as well. It's a lot of people sort of do the castle and the manuscripts, and the castle, usually if somebody does it well, will do pretty damn well at it. So it's a little bit hard to gauge what the actual ranking for this one probably should have been. Maybe sort of kept up at a 9. And like I say, 9 is not a bad rating. It's still a Seal of Distinction game. So I think the question is really, is this worthy of the Seal of Distinction I gave it in the first place? And I want to say yes, but I think maybe a 10 is going far. I think I still would have given this a 9 at the time. But to call this a benchmark, to say that I'm comparing other games to this, not so much. It's a very enjoyable game, but 10 was generous. I think, this is the one that's definitely, I think, suffered more as time has gone on. All right, let's have a look at others. Let's say I've got Abyss. Abyss is generally a game that I really like. Is it worthy of a 10? You do want to play it with a decent amount of players, and you do want to ideally use the expansions, because the expansions do a great job with this game. Would I rate it a 10 if I was ranking just the base game on its own? That might be saying something, in fact, I'm not entirely sure if I did rank the original base game a 10. I think the game's now a 10 for me with the other stuff included, but 10 I think would be generous for this game if I was ranking just the base game, because the base game does have problems. It's best with more players. It doesn't work as well with less players, because you want the, I don't want to say those words, something the depths, going into the depths or whatever to get more allied cards. Isn't as interesting with less players. It really does want a full count of 4 ideally. So 3's fine, but you really want 4. 2 doesn't work with this game, I don't think. The heroes, there's only so many of them. Some were a bit better than others. The locations, again, had that similar thing. But the main problem that the base set of Abyss has is that monster track. That monster track there on the right is just garbage. It's a garbage mechanic in the original one. You level it up, but it doesn't level up very far before somebody claims all the rewards on it. And it just wasn't very good. I mean, this monster token is at the bottom of the track. So, top, bottom, whatever. It goes down. But it never usually gets further than the key before somebody takes the reward. And there's not enough monsters in the deck for it to get all the way down before somebody just says, yeah, I want it. So that mechanic was pretty bad. So this is a game that I really do like and rate a 10 now, with 2 expansions thrown in. I don't know if I ranked it a 10 originally, but would I rank it a 10 base set now? No, it wouldn't be. It would probably be possibly a 9, maybe even only an 8 out of 10. The expansions really did help this game to make it a lot better. It hasn't been played in a little while, but I still really enjoy it. Does that mean it will fall out of my top 10? We shall see. But it's it's still a really great game. I still love it. But 10 for the base game? No, that wouldn't have happened. If I was ranking it now, it wouldn't get a 10 as a base set. It needed help. Okay, let's talk about another one. Ark Nova. Ark Nova. I love this game. I play it on BGA. I play it in Plays. I don't even know why I've logged Plays here. I think I must have been logged into the wrong account when I was looking at stuff. But I still love this game. I still think it's a 10. There's not much I can really say. It's just fantastic. I love it as a Tableau game. I'm going to compare it to other Tableau games. I love it as the typewriter mechanic game. I'm going to compare it to others. And Sanctuary did try to get compared to this one. Yes, it was meant to be its own game, but let's face it, it was basically Ark Nova Light. And Sanctuary, if you watch my review, I only gave a 5 out of 10 to. It's a fairly meh game. It tried to do something, lighter with it, and it didn't work. It took a lot of the great stuff from this game and removed it and diluted it too much. So, that one was a pale comparison, but Ark Nova still gets the plays. It's still a great game. This is a 10. I'm still keeping it as a 10. It's happening. Okay. What else we got? Art Society. That is one. I think I was a bit generous with this one. It is a great game. I still really like it. It's really solid tile placement game where you've got these paintings you grab by a sort of closed bidding system to get the paintings and put them on your board. You want to get certain paintings next to each other, but there are some that you don't want next to each other. I think somebody's committed a faux pas or two on this board, for example. But it's it's not Tetris. You're putting rectangles and squares on, so it's a bit easier to deal with the whole spatial awareness thing. But I love the fact that when you are doing the bidding on this game for the paintings, you can choose which ones go into the bidding mix, and it looks gorgeous as well, doesn't it? But you choose which paintings go on. But when you're choosing a painting, you've got to decide between multiple things, like what type of frame does it have, what type is it, how big is it, how big a bidding amount am I going to put in for this, So, and also the one that's left over increases on the track, and they get ranked, as you can see here, based on how many victory points each one is worth. So you're going to want certain colors to level up more than others. It's such a clever game. I rated it a 10. Maybe that was a little bit too generous because I still really love it. It's still in my collection, and I can't remember if I've talked about it yet on my top 50 or not. I don't know, but yeah, it's a really great game. 10 might have been going a bit far though. Like a 9, definitely. I mean, I do think this is a really solid game. That definitely, they're bringing out a new version of it with a revised insert. I mean, the insert was fine, but they're bringing out a better insert. They're upping the sort of component quality in that, even though it was still pretty decent, and bringing out an expansion for it. So yes, I am pretty sure that Mighty Boards will get in touch with me when that gets to more fruition. I look forward to covering both at some point, the changes from both editions and what the expansion entails. So I still really love this. A 10 was too far though. I mean, would I class this as a benchmark game? It's quite unique in its own way, so it's hard to know what I would compare this to. You can't really compare it to other polyomino games to an extent because it doesn't use all the polyominoes, it's just squares and rectangles. So it's a little bit hard to say what game you compare it to. A bidding game, a tile placement game, it's hard to say. But it is a really great game and I do love playing it. But maybe it was better to have capped it at 9. Benchmark levels, probably not. A 9, no, definitely. I still think it's worthy of that 9 out of 10 rating. Just maybe a 10 was a little bit too bit too high emotional for that one. Okay, let's see what else we got. Citadels. Well, Citadels I still really like as a game. I still think Citadels is great. Do I think it's worthy of a 10? I mean, I still love the game. I suppose now it would be a 9, but it's an evergreen for me at this point. It's a role selection game, one of the earliest role selection games, one of the first board games of post 2000 board games I've ever played. I played Citadels pretty much at university when I was at university at the time of its original release. It's a game I love. But in its original form, it did have problems with the length of the game and player count balance and stuff. The revised version did fix it. They brought in expansions to add more characters for a bit more variety. They shortened the length of the game, which was a good thing. Component quality was improved as well from the artwork. So I still really love it. I suppose I still could give this a 10. Because when I think of role selection games, this is one of the benchmark role selection games that there is. And there have been others that I have played. What's the one? Is it Ratus? That's a role selection game. And I've played that one, but I'd much rather play Citadels, honestly. And Mission Red Planet is another one, which has got a similar feel to Citadels, but I'd rather play Citadels. So Citadels, I think, still probably does justify that 10 out of 10 rating for me. At worst, it'd be a 9. But this is my go-to role selection game, so I'm not going to change there. Okay, let's find. Let's see. I can't go over every single game, so let's find one that I'm a little bit more on. Well, people got on my case recently about Ember Heart being a 10 out of 10. I still think that this is a game that should be considered a benchmark. Now, is it one that I want to play over and over again? No, but that's not what the rating is getting at. This is a game that has, for me, replaced stuff like Lords of Waterdeep and that. It's just such a buttery smooth worker placement game that, you know, is gorgeous production, really cheap to buy, you know, simple to teach. Even from the rule book, it was easy for me to learn this one. I literally taught it on the same day I read it from the rule book. Has a little bit of variety with the heroes and how you can sort of go about with your dragon companion. But yes, let's be honest, there's not a ton of different paths to victory in this game. And it does have one flaw with it, which is the flame track. Now, the flame track for me has not broken the game like some people say, but there is a potential issue with it. If I can see it in there. The flame track here at the top basically is a points differential at the end of the game. And when you do certain things, the more lucrative stuff burns you and you go higher up the track. And the disparity between you and the lowest marker will obviously depend on, on the lower markers will depend how many points they get. Now, people think that you can max out the track and just remain there because there's no penalty for maxing out the track. I would admit that is a potential flaw of the game. However, that has not created a situation where somebody has exploited it and still won the game in the games I have played. They've come close. Not gonna lie, they've come close. But I've usually been the one with 20 points at the end of the game as a result of being lower on the flame track, and I've won, those games. So, I do think it can be a potential issue, but if you know how to play the game well, you can get around it. But I always say now, if you really are bummed out about that, here's a house rule. Every time you increase on the burn track and you don't have, every time you increase on the burn track and you're at the maximum point, say you lose a worker. You lose one of the tokens. Every time you do it. That's enough of a deterrent to not want to spam it all the time. Because you're reducing your effectiveness in one of the critical phases of the game. Put that house rule in and see how you get on. There you go, fixed. But it's never caused that much of a problem for me. I might just introduce that into my games just as a little extra incentive. But it's still buttery smooth, really gorgeous, really cheap, really easy to teach and play. It can outstay its welcome a little bit, but with 4 players. But generally with 3 or less, it's still pretty good. No solo mode, don't really care. Not every game needs one. It's just a really solid game. I still think it's deserving of the 10. I think it ticks a lot of boxes. Now, again, do I want to play it over and over again? No. But am I happy to play it when it gets suggested? Yes, it fills that niche for me nicely. It's kind of on the same... I mean, it's not as... Sorry, no. This one is better than the alternative, which is River of Gold. Which I don't think is behind my head. I think it's in my bag at the moment. But River of Gold is... sorry, bit my lip. River of Gold is a, easy, lightweight Euro. And that, for me, kind of replaced something like Lords of Waterdeep and stuff like that as well. So these 2 games are filling that niche quite nicely. And I think this one still deserves the 10. I considered whether... it's not like it was a... it's not like I would say this is the highest 10 ever. I still think maybe that this was like brushing a 10. So you could argue maybe this could go down to a 9, but I don't think like the flaws of this game are enough to stop the fact that this can be a benchmark level game. So I'm still sticking to my guns with this one. Okay, what else we got? Something that's probably not a 10 anymore. Let's play a bit more devil's advocate here. That one already done Viscounts. Here's a couple. Yeah, these ones could drop. All right, let's talk about these ones. Let's go back to thing. So first off, Street Masters. I think I might have been on a bit of a Sentinels in the Multiverse fix, which I still think is a 10. That is not dropping. But Street Masters, I gave it a 10. Maybe that was a bit generous. It is quite a bloated game. There's a lot of content for it, and it's a bit hard trying to sift what it is you want. And how easy it is and that. The rules are not the best written. There's definitely elements of, some FAQ nonsense going on. The component quality is only so-so. I like the cards, and the card artwork definitely fits the theme, but the components and what this sort of stuff looks like is pretty basic. It doesn't, the miniatures are only so-so, unless you take the time to paint like some of these people do. It represents its theme brilliantly. It does feel like Street Fighter mixed with Double Dragon, mixed with Streets of Rage, that kind of thing. So, and especially for those who have painted it, it is a really good, fun game to play solo or two-player. I do think it's pretty much a solo or two-player game for me. But, yeah, 10 out of 10? No. Someone's playing on an Arkham Horror playmat. That's an interesting mat to use. But, it's a fun game. It hasn't come off the shelf in a while, though, because of the amount of content in it and trying to relearn the rules and stuff each time. It's got some problems, and the reprint that was done by the other publisher, didn't overly help. In fact, I actually think the new version that was done by Steamforged Games wasn't as good as the original big box set that I have, so much so that I actually got rid of the new version and kept the old one, because I think the old one was better. So it's definitely, I don't think, worthy of a 10. Like, this one would be a 9, possibly even an 8, actually. It's, I still really enjoy it, but it's not coming off the shelf. It does have some problems, and those problems are definitely enough to take it out of the 10 out of 10 category. So probably a bit generous with this one. Still really great fun, but it's not getting played anywhere near as much as it should for a 10. Okay, and the other one I want to discuss that's definitely, I think, a bit too generous is a game called Tribes of the Wind. I think I rode high with this one because of how innovative it is. It's a very innovative game. It's basically taking the Hanabi mechanic and introducing it into a light Euro. But I gave this one a 10 because I was definitely riding a high for how good fun I was having with the games I was playing. How gorgeous it looks, how simple it is, there's a lot of good stuff about this game. 10 out of 10 though, I think maybe I was riding the innovation front a bit too much, because it is definitely unique. But the game's not flawless. Player count wise, this game does not work above 3 players. I mean, you can play it with 4, but it's pointless to play it with 4 because even more than something like Seven Wonders, this game does not care enough about having more players. It just adds too much length to the game. 5 players is a waste of time. They put 5 on this game to sell more copies. That's all they did. It's not worth doing. 4 player, again, is still, I think, too much. This setup with 3 is ideal, though. And even the 2-player version is pretty sweet, actually. The 2-player version uses the middle cards as kind of like a dummy hand, and that works really well. So for 2 and 3 players, I can wholeheartedly recommend this game. For 4 or 5, though, that's a lot of player counts to be giving a 10 out of 10 to. It should have been good at all player counts to really warrant that. But then also, the game does have some balance issues. The cards, the objective cards, some are definitely a bit easier than others. The powers that you can unlock with the asymmetric characters, there are definitely some powers that are better than others. The objectives cards themselves, I think there's a luck of the draw element with, which one you started the game with and which ones you end up with, because if you have one at the start of the game that's worth a ton of points, that one is infinitely better to have at the start of the game than one that's only worth about 6 or 7. It's you kind of want, some much better objectives to begin with. And it's just, as I say, and like I say, the mechanics of the game are simple, but at the end of the day, you're placing colored tiles down and moving stuff around and, doing a little bit of resource management. It's like, it does have some niggling problems. So I would still probably at least give this one a 9. I think for me, though, it might have even dropped to an 8 at this point. It's still a game I really enjoy. I still think it's pretty innovative, but it does have some problems, and I'm not sure it's standing the test of time as much because there's not a huge amount of differentiation in the path to victory. It's very much a tactical game. You can't say, right, this game I'm going to focus highly on this. It's like, you kind of have to judge everything at the time, which is one thing I do like about it. I do like tactical games, but it does mean that the variety suffers a bit. And that's one thing I think this game does have a problem with. The variety in the game just isn't quite there. But I do think, 10 was too generous. If I was ranking this game now, I would certainly praise it. I still think it's underrated. I think you should definitely give this one a try if you want a really interesting 2 to 3 player game. That's quite easy and light. But a 10 out of 10, no. No, 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 no. I rode a high with this one, rated it too high. This one wasn't correct. Okay. Anything else before I end? Because we're already up to the hour mark. Anything else? I mean, I'm just going to skim a few quickly. I'm not even going to do the images. I'm just going to go back to normal here and just shout out a few. I already mentioned Sentinels in the Multiverse. No, that is staying as a 10. That is a benchmark co-op game. I love it. It's amazing. Pursuit of Happiness and Pulsar 2849. They recently got talked about on the 50 to 41. Yeah, they have gone down for me. They would probably be 9 out of 10s now. They're definitely very fun games, but would I rank them a 10 if I'd rated them again? Maybe not, but they are pretty damn good. Yeah, there is that. Valley of the Kings, yeah, rating it a 10. I don't know. It takes a long time when you play it with high player counts, and the starter cards were not particularly overly well balanced. You needed the Afterlife expansion to... Was it Afterlife or one of the others? I can't remember which one it was. No, Last Rites. Yeah, as I look behind me at it. Last Rites really did fix the starter cards. It doesn't really have a solo mode that I would go mad for, so it's really a 2 to 3 player game. I still think it's one of the best deck builders there is. 10 out of 10 might be a bit much. I'd probably say 9 at this point. Let's see. The South Tigris games. Was it Wayfarers of the South Tigris? I still think that's a... I mean, I really do love that game, though. And like I say, some of it is personal enjoyment. It's not just simply detaching my enjoyment of the game, but is Wayfarers of the South Tigris a benchmark? Possibly. I'd still say that's worthy of the 10. It really does a good job. It has one or two minor issues with the cards not going away, but then you do have a way of mitigating that, and you could house rule some easy mechanic in there to wipe a few cards every now and again. So, I mean, it's something that you could fix, but I think it's still worthy. Spirit Island, that is definitely still a 10. I think that is definitely a very unique benchmark heavy co-op game. You want a really thinky co-op game that's thematic, and interesting and works at all player counts. That is definitely worthy of a 10. What else we got? SETI. I did say that was brushing a 10. I still think it is a 10, but you could argue maybe that should have been a 9. As I say, it's not bad if they become a 9. It's just that if I rank them now, would they be the same? Hegemony still a 10. Let's see. The Hanamakoji. Is that a 10? Hanamakoji, that 2-player game from Empress 4. And the expansions do add a bit more variety to it, and it's only got so much variety in its base box. It would easily be a 9. Would it be a 10? Actually, I don't know. I think it'd still be a 10. It definitely is, out of the 2-player games I've played, a benchmark 2-player game. Now, does that mean it's one that I play a lot at the moment? No, because it's a 2-player only game. I rarely get those to the table. So, will it be in my top 50 or my top 100? Probably not. But I'd still probably rate it a 10 because it's such a good benchmark 2-player game. They just don't get played much. Maybe it would need to drop a rating for that. I feel like giving it an 8 out of 10 would be harsh, though. I think it is that good. Geisha's Road and a couple of others tried to do similar things with it, and they didn't do as well. So I think this one is still deserving of at least a 9, if not a 10. But yeah, so there's a bunch there. So, and I'm not going to go into everything I ranked a 10, because otherwise I'd be spoiling most of the top 50, I suspect. But, it depends how many people watch this and then that. But yeah, I mean, the idea is that there's going to be games that I probably were too harsh on, more so the games I was too generous on, because I'm definitely more critical of board games. I will certainly be picking at them more. I'm more consumer focused. I'm, careful with my money. If I'm going to be spending a lot of money on a game, you better justify it, which is why I'm actually waning off Speakeasy at the moment. I would still like somebody to put it in front of me and play it, but it's starting to appear more in the UK now. You can sort of pre-order it, but it's pre-ordering at £125. I'm sorry, that is a lot to spend on a game for a gamble, and this would be a game that would require a ton of investment in time and hours to play, and the more I see it online, the more I'm waning off it, because the flaws that are being mentioned with this game, people mentioning, people who just love it to bits and won't say any flaws are living in a dream world. there's clearly flaws with this game, because the ones that I see that are doing pros and cons say, this is what I like about it, here's some problems. These are legit problems in the game, chaps. I mean, there are some issues in this game. It's just a case of whether they are issues as much for you as others. But it's also like a massive table hog. I mean, for a solo game, Speakeasy wants the entire like Geeksen table to itself. For a solo game, that's a little bit ridiculous. Even Frostpunk doesn't. Actually, Frostpunk, Matt, Tower, those 4 boards. Actually, Frostpunk does take a lot of that for solo, but that is a much more... I mean, that's a big thematic game that's got to have presence. Speakeasy does not have to do that. It's hard to say, but yeah, I mean, I've seen Speakeasy just sprawl over tables, and it's kind of ridiculous, but, I'm just less keen on it the more I hear about it. But, but there's definitely games that I've been critical on, very critical on, and maybe gone, yeah, you know what, maybe I can reward some aspects of this game, especially when you're saying a game is like a 1 or a 2 out of 10. That is pretty low down. But when I get a game that is a 10 out of 10 and a benchmark level, usually it's worse. I mean, I'm trying to play devil's advocate as much as I can, but at worse, it's probably just still going to be a 9. It's unlikely that if I give a seal of distinction to something that I rate a 10, that it would suddenly not get a seal of distinction from me. I could argue maybe that Tribes of the Wind that I was talking about is probably the biggest contender for that. A game which I ranked a 10, probably might have only even given a seal of approval as opposed to distinction. There's not many of those games in existence. Usually they're going to be, okay, so if I don't think it's a benchmark title, I'm still going to think it's a damn good title. Maybe it would be interesting to look at the ones I rank a 9 out of 10. And see if they actually don't deserve a seal of distinction. But again, that just sounds like I'm being too harsh on those games, because they are still, good ones. Although the disparity between an 8 and a 9 is probably higher. I would say the disparity between a 9 and a 10 is a small gap compared to the disparity between an 8 and a 9, because with those 2 ratings, I'm trying to distinguish whether I give it a seal of approval or a seal of distinction. And those 2 are very different in terms of grading. If you see a box out there like Galactic Cruise or something like that with or Ader's Dream or something with my gold seal of distinction sticker on it, there's a reason I gave it a seal of distinction. It means a lot from me, who generally ranks games lower than other people. So a bit of fact, somebody I'm trying to remember. Can I find the comment actually just before I sign off? This made my day. This absolutely made my day, and if I can find the comment, I'm going to shout it out now, because this is the sort of stuff I like to read. I was coming into this morning, and I was like, all right, I'm tired, I had a late night, job starting tomorrow, thinking about that sort of stuff, and I was thinking, all right, come on, let's get the podcast done, it needs to be done. I'm still contemplating whether this podcast should be monthly, honestly. Would it really kill me if I did this monthly rather than fortnightly? We'll have to see, but it'd be interesting to know your thoughts on that. But especially as they're usually an hour long anyway. At least I would make them long podcasts. Maybe I'd make them an hour and a half in the future if I did it monthly. So you had a nice long podcast to listen to. But I was looking at Merv, the board game Merv, and I did a video for that one ages ago. And on this one, somebody put a comment on it today, and I'm definitely going to shout this out. Where the hell's the video? Damn it, I'm going to find it. All video reviews, 39. There's a lot of video reviews for this. Somewhere here, there is the Broken Meeple review. Here we go. Heart of the Silk Road review. Should you buy... Oh, this was the time when I was saying, should you buy this game? That is a title, which is so cliche. But somebody put a comment this morning, just known as Beast of Leisure. Not familiar, but yeah. Dude, you are becoming a rare thing. A reviewer I actually trust to critique a game properly. There seems to be fewer and fewer reviewers willing to stick their neck out and say unflattering things about games. I appreciate you for not being an industry shill. Thank you. Maybe using the word shill is a bit much to say, especially when describing anyone else. But, just get a comment like that just to say that, the stuff you do is really nice. I'm not saying I need to be flooded with this stuff, but I read that this morning before I got onto this podcast, and it just made my day. To get comments like that every now and again, really does make all this effort worth it. And I don't need them every second. I still enjoy what I do. I still enjoy doing this. But, you have to put up with a few trolls and haters every now and again, doing it the way I do things. it's nice to get it the other way around at times as well. So, yeah, that made my day. So thanks, Beast, for that. That was just a very nice comment to read. Anyway, I'm going to sign off this podcast and get it edited and sorted. So thank you for listening. Hopefully this reverse topic worked for you. I don't know, but I thought it was an interesting idea, so I thought I'd give it a try. But I'm certainly going to ask the Patreons, I think, for some more topic ideas before the next one in the fortnight, because I'm definitely going to need more to talk about. Take care, everybody. Thanks for listening. Share it on social media, thumb it up, and the podcast should now be working on the RSS feed now. I fixed that problem. For whatever reason, SoundCloud.net didn't fully process the tracks, so even though I uploaded them, they didn't fully process, which means they didn't link out to other sources. So I've corrected that. You should now find podcasts 126 and 127. They might be in the wrong order because of when I uploaded them. There was other problems, but they are there. So you should have had those fed to you now. This one should feed to you. I'm going to keep double checking that they fully process, so we should avoid that problem. So if you're on Spotify or Apple and other providers, you should be getting all the podcasts now. So thank you for listening, and thank you for bringing that to my attention. I'll see you on the next Broken Meeple show. Take care and enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Wish me luck tomorrow, guys. Bye-bye.